that I notice about these days is that there is more fluid connection with others, and maybe you've connected with family in a different way than normal. But my wife and I, Dawn and I, have actually had Zoom calls with our brothers and sisters and kids and parents, and it's pretty remarkable how we can connect that way. And so that's been a real blessing. In addition to that blessing, there are some challenges that many of us are facing in life. Some of us are in a position where everybody in the family still has jobs, and that's great, and some still have jobs, but they have kids at home now, and they're supposed to be homeschooling on top of doing their job. And some don't have a job, or they've been furloughed, or they've lost their job because of this. And so there's such a significant difference in how we are facing some of the realities that we're facing. And so one of the things that we've talked about is anxiety and fear and not knowing what's coming next. And so, you know, it would be normal if you're still feeling some of those things. It also would be normal if by this time we're tuning into other things, people on our nerves around us. The fact that I can't control things feels irritating and frustrating. I just might be dealing with anger in a whole new way. And so today we're going to be looking at that a little bit and how to navigate some of those pieces that come up in life that are very difficult, that are a lot different than anxiety or fear. And so one of the things I wanted to bring us to is, you know, growing up, my family, my brother and sister and I, had a chance to every year go camping, and more or less every year. And we would go up to Wyoming, where my dad grew up, and his dad bought a log cabin up there, and it's just a great getaway space. And my dad taught us how to backpack and camp, and if any of you have grown up camping, you know that there's a lot of fun things about camping. It's an awful lot of work, but one of the best things about camping is the campfire, right? And so the interesting thing about camping and the campfire is that as great as it is, a place to connect and everything, there's always the smoke. And the smoke gets in your eyes, and it doesn't matter where you sit, it shifts and comes back at you, and you get up and you move to the other side of the fire, and there it is coming right in your face again. And so it's just irritating at times and frustrating, and there's jokes about smoke following beauty, and the guys are like, yeah, don't call me that. And it's just irritating, frustrating, and yet there is something worthwhile about the campfire, right? We're drawn together. The interesting thing is that the value isn't really of a campfire isn't in the smoke, which is what we're directly trying to avoid. It's in what's beneath the smoke. It's the heat that comes, it's the light that comes, it draws us together, it invites us to sing songs and tell stories. And so it's interesting that we might consider intense emotions like smoke. Okay, it's irritating. We want to move away from it. We want to push it away. We want to go someplace where it's not. It just feels like it's getting in the way, and it's worth kind of noticing that, okay, so but if there's smoke, there's something underneath the smoke that is valuable. And so we want to kind of think about that a little bit today in the context of anger. Because when we are angry, one lens to look at it through is the lens that says, if I'm angry, something that I care about, a value that I have, feels like it's been violated. And so there's this thing that I care about, that matters to me, and it is something real. And if that something real feels like it's really been violated, then anger naturally comes up in me. It's not something that is weird. It's very predictable. And so sometimes if I'm experiencing anger, one of the things I can do is take a step back from that anger and ask some questions. I can remember a time when you know, as a kid, I was going to meet a friend at the movies, and I showed up, and he didn't show up. And I thought, this is really irritating. This is not right. This is not fair. I'm frustrated. And there is this thing, you know, I didn't get a text, I didn't get a call ahead of time, I didn't get anything that said, hey, there's going to be something that came up, and sorry, let's make another plan. So there's this thing that says I should be respected. And even more broadly than that, friends respect friends, and they don't stand them up. And so that value feels like it's a good, solid value, and the fact that I got stood up, and the fact that I didn't get a contact ahead of time is all stuff that screams at me something I care about has been wronged and violated, and so naturally anger comes out. And so one of the things that I want to do is recall when I'm dealing with that. I want to recognize that there are questions I can ask about that value. And the first thing I want to ask is this value a good value? Is this value a value that I want to be part of me? What would I be like without this value? And if this value, if the best words I have is we ought to respect one another, then I would think, what would it be like for me to walk through life without that value? And I would think, I don't think I want to be a person who walks through life without the value of respecting one another. And then we might ask the question, is that a godly value? Is that something that God would approve of? And I would think, okay, so we talk about honoring and respect significantly a number of times in Scripture, and I'd say, yeah, that seems like a godly value. And then we might ask the question, is there a real violation? And you know, something might have come up and it was out of his control, but you know, generally speaking, I would say, yes, there was a real valid violation. And so there is a real value, it's a good value, and it's really been violated, and I really am angry. And so it's not like this is coming out of nowhere and it makes no sense. I can also ask the question, though, is some of this a selfish value? Like, I'm the one that now has to decide, am I going to go in and watch this movie that I wanted to watch all by myself, and I hate watching movies by myself, or am I going to have to go home and miss the movie? And so like with this godly value of respecting one another, there might even be some selfish pieces that are kind of wrapped around there too. So there's godliness and there's selfish pieces. And so part of what we want to do is figure out what those two pieces are and peel away the selfish pieces. And those selfish pieces are real, just like the other ones are, but they're not serving me, they're not helping me, and what I mostly want to do with them is yield them. I want to take them to the place where they can be the most ministered to, and that is the foot of the cross, and I can say, Lord, I'm going to give you, here, we're not surprised, are we? Here's me showing up again, not getting what I want, and I want to give this to you. And I might be grabbing it back in 10 minutes, but right now I want to give it to you, and in 10 minutes if I grab it back, I'm going to try to give it to you again, because mostly I want to recognize that there is some real healthy reason for my anger. It's a real violation, it's a real value that's there, and so I want to be able to move into that in a good way. And so we're going to look at that a few different ways here in just the few minutes that we have. You know, you may have grown up in a context that says anger is not okay. It may be that anger is not okay for a number of reasons. Maybe someone around you was explosive when they got angry and it just wasn't safe. Maybe a family rule was go to your room and come back when you can have a smile on your face. Maybe you grew up in an atmosphere that was actually really spiritual, but somehow the message that was communicated was anger's bad. You're bad when you're angry. And so we want to recognize that there's a number of different reasons why when we have anger, we might not be able to, in a healthy way, let it move through us. Remember that context, that note that says our hearts were designed to be a conduit, not a container. And when our heart is a container, unhealthy things begin to build up. And so with anger, I want to find out constructive ways of letting it move through me. And so if I've been told that it's not good to be angry, if I've been told that it's not healthy to be angry, if I've been told or I've been exposed to things when anger is dangerous, then there's going to be lots of reasons to hold it up into a container and not let it flow through. And so interesting, in Scripture we see in James 1 that we should be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. And so there's something about character that's there. And we ought to, in Ephesians 4, it says, be angry and yet do not sin. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. And so those are really helpful verses that say, okay, so there's something I can do in a character way to affect my anger. What it actually does is it invites us to recognize that I can regulate some of my anger. I can move in a direction that actually helps me regulate it, not feel quite as intensely as I am right now. So anger is one of those emotions that's kind of like, remember Roger Shepard's comment, treat your emotions like kids in the car. Don't put them in the trunk, but don't give them the steering wheel. Anger can grab the steering wheel sometimes, right? And so in just the couple minutes that we have left, I just want to mention that we want to try to take a half step back from that. First off, maybe it's just taking a deep breath. And if I can take a deep breath, I'm buying myself maybe 20 seconds, and in that 20 seconds I can invite myself into recognizing, okay, so I could be saying I'm angry, and that's true, but it's also maybe more healthy to say I'm experiencing an emotion that's known as anger right now. And there may be really good reasons that I'm experiencing it. Because that gives me a half step removed and recognizing I can actually, this is something that's here, but it doesn't have to be here forever. And I can allow it to move through me. Once I'm taking that half step back, I can recognize that there is some level that I'm experiencing this anger. It might be at a 0 if I'm just fully peaceful. It might be at a 10 if I'm explosive in my anger. But if there is some level, let's say it's a 5. A 5 is a lot of anger, but I can do some things. And even as I took that breath and took that half step back, I might have shifted down to a 4. A 4 is easier to navigate than a 5 is, right? And so I can do some things to be angry and not sin. And I want to ask some questions here at the end we're going to close up in just a second. And many of you may know that I'm going to be opening a Zoom call from about 9:15 to 9:55, as long as Zoom will, keep us connected. And that's not for individual counseling. It's not for group counseling. It's not confidential. It's just whoever wants to get on and talk more about this or other things they're going through. So I'm going to give you 3-4 questions about the energy what do I do with this energy that comes from anger? Because anger, one of the gifts of it is that there's a lot of energy. And one is there a way to constructively right what has been wronged? Is there a way to constructively make a correction? Number 2 is there a way to constructively affect future times when this might happen so that it happens less? Number 3 is, do I just need to find some way to bleed off some of this extra energy? Do I need to walk or run or go lift weights, or what can I do? Is there a healthy place I can talk this through where I'm not going to be sinning against somebody? Maybe I journal, maybe I talk with a friend who's mature enough to navigate through it with me. And then also asking a whole new set of questions is how much of this is in my control, right? I want to be able to notice there are some things that I can control and some things I can't control. And sometimes it's those things that I can't control that explode my anger. Okay, so that's the time that we have for today. I hope that even some of those structures and things are helpful for you as they've been helpful for me. If you are tuning in the here and now and want to tune into the Zoom call, we've put it up on the Facebook page for H2O Church. If you're tuning in 40 minutes from now or so, that link will already be taken down, and because I'm probably not going to be staying on the Zoom call all day. So remember, as we're heading out here, I am where I am, but I don't have to stay there. And that's true for anger and many of the other things that we go through. I am where I am, but I don't have to stay here. So I hope you have a great rest of your Monday, and I'll be praying for your heart.